Okay, if I can get everybody to stand up, start the meeting. Before we start the meeting and do the pledge, I just want to do a moment of silence. Andrea, who's on our committee and one of the council members, her mother just passed, so if you don't mind, just honor her in a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Sandy, can we get a roll call?
Nathan Parchman.
Here.
Jessica Lott. Here. Chris Monroe. Stephanie Small here. Jim Campbell.
Here.
Andrea Foney. Okay, we do not have a quorum.
All right, that being said, we cannot approve the minutes, so we'll move on unless anybody's got any questions or comments on that. If not, we'll move into 2.1, resolution authorizing adoption of financial policy. Sandy?
Okay, thank you. So these are not new policies, they're just written policies. A lot of these we've been following for as long as I remember, and it's just been apparent, you know, we should probably get them in writing. A lot of these are based on GFOA's best practices, and GFOAs are Government Financial Officers Association, which most of our communities do follow. So, you know, I do have a correction. We can go through if anyone has any questions. Some of the big ones, of course, are like our fund balance, and one of the recommendations is 15 to 20% of estimated annual revenues for both general fund, enterprise funds. We are far above that 15 to 20%, but it is a GFOA recommended practice. And this is again why we have such sound reserves. We do follow this fund balance. Let's see, when we talk about if the balance should exceed 20%, the excess can be utilized for one-time expenditures as recommended by the City Council. So just to give you an idea, 20% of our revenues, estimated revenues is $5.3 million. Our fund balance on our draft audit came in at $39 million. So we're way above that. One of the next things is the reserves. So the reserves, as you know, is something we definitely have strong reserves. I'm very proud of those. And one of the things, I apologize, we went through this and I attached the wrong one. So our reserve policy is really where we're at now. You know that we have the 3 months of current budget operating expenditures. So when you look at the treasurer's report, you see that 3 months. And then 10%, and I called it a 10% emergency reserve, but it really was, what that 10% was 10% of basically the cash. So based on IGFOA or GFOA, it said 10% of the current budgeted revenues. And so that's a better, you know, actual number that we can stick to. So you'll see that annually change, you know, so it'll be based on the budgeted revenue. So again, I apologize. So when you'll get it next at the meeting, it'll say 10%, and that'll follow our current policy. A lot of it is just kind of, again, diversification of revenues. You know, we try to do as much as we can. We look at all of our fees, license, fines. You know, we go through those on an annual basis. You know, but expenditures, expense, balanced budget. We always go for a balanced budget, and we're kind of a pay-as-you-go basis. We have our revenues that are balanced by our expenditures, and we do that every year. And it says that the budget shall be considered balanced if the ending fund balance exceeds that 15% target. So again, we end up, even though our revenues and expenditures at the end of the year may not be equal, right? We budget for it to be a fund balance, but sometimes revenues come in lower and expenses, but as long as that fund balance, we consider that balanced. Capital improvements, basically we have our capital replacement plan, and that's anything under that 15,000, and this is something that goes through our budget. The capital improvement plan, which is our CIP, We'll actually have a preview of that tonight. And those are those projects and cost, you know, vehicles over the 15,000 and construction projects over 50,000 or more. And those are the ones that you'll see during the budget process is how we approve those large item spending. Accounting is just talking about we follow the generally accepted accounting principles, and that we do have an annual audit every year. We do follow internal controls. We actually are spending more time internally in our finance office doing more internal controls, making sure everything is followed. And the last one is really our debt policy. As a home rule, so if you're not a home rule, there's the Illinois statute that says you have to not exceed 8.625 of your assessed valuation for any GO bonds. Home rule does not have that exception. However, we find it very prudent, even though, you know, we don't have to. It's probably a prudent idea to do that 8.625. So we went ahead and put that in the policy. To give you an idea, 8.625 of the total EAV would bring us at about $77 million in debt. Right now, the current budget or current audit shows us right at about 43 million. So even if we add, we'll have the park, you know, the 8.5 million, and we'll be under that target. So, and again, the other thing we always put in here is that, you know, we always make sure that we have a revenue source before we issue that debt. So those are the policies. Again, we've had verbal policies, things that we followed. One of the other reasons we're doing it is because we'll soon be going out for a bond rating, and it's always good to have policies written. So, so basically that's it. There is a resolution that will need to be passed at the next committee meeting or at the next council meeting. So if there's any questions on those.
Any questions for Sandy from the committee? Council? Public? All right. Anything else, Sandy?
Nope, that's it.
All right, moving to 2.2, ordinance identifying home rule conflicts with certain state laws regarding paid leave for all workers act.
Okay, so these are items, Ashley Baker and Grant Lidikin, they will talk about those.
Thank you, and yes, thank you for the reintroduction of Ashley Baker, our HR manager. So if we get technical questions, she can sure to be answering those, but I will lead this. So the Paid Leave for All Workers Act is a new law that was signed by the governor. And so the main point of the law is that beginning on January 1 of 2024, all employers in the state of Illinois are required to provide 40 hours of paid leave during a 12-month period. And so part of those administrative duties would give all employees 1 hour of paid time off per 40 hours worked. And that's on a rolling kind of work schedule. So an employee that may work 5 or 10 hours a week, as soon as they hit 40 hours, they get a paid hour off. So as a home rule community, this was a big conversation piece at the IML conference and amongst the city managers groups. And so as a home rule community, we can opt out of this new law, and they are encouraging us to do so before January 1. Go ahead and go down, please. Okay, so some of the conflicts that we're dealing with if this act does go into effect and we do not opt out. So provisions of the new law would place an undue burden on the city as an employer. And that's the main reason why cities, home rule communities around the state, as well as the attorneys that represent them, are recommending and by a large margin opting out of this new law. Within that law, school districts and park districts are already exempt for these very same reasons why we are opting to opt out. Currently, there's some great lobbying going on to have fire districts in cities, municipalities, counties also be exempt from that. So in the effect that does not happen, our opt-out would grant us relief from this law going into effect January 1 and the impact it would have on the city. So a few of the conflicts we're dealing with, all of our eligible employees and our labor unions in all 4 of our collective bargaining agreements have greater benefits than what are provided in this new law. So no current employee that's eligible for benefits would see any diminished or lessened leave. Looking at the main impact would be on the fire department and park seasonal employees. And so we estimate that it'll be about a $60,000 increase in operational costs for our summertime seasonals in the parks. We do not have an accurate amount for the fire department because that is not how we calculate employee and personnel. They get paid by the call and not by the time worked. So in addition to the increases in minimum wage over the last few years and going up to $15, you know, I'm not quite done yet, Sandy. Keep going, stay up there. So it's about, with minimum wage plus this, you're looking at $500,000 to $600,000 in operational costs we've experienced from these. So the other issue is just the administrative and clerical work of scheduling seasonal employees. All of our seasonal employees as paid time, or as seasonal and part-time employees get to choose their own schedule. They're allowed to swap schedules. And so the new act would not allow us to require employees to have to switch schedules. So essentially we would have employees calling off minutes before their shift starts with no ability to have the shift covered. And so we would have to cancel games and swimming lessons and the pool times immediately whenever somebody doesn't show up, because we are required by law to have certain provisions of employees there for safety. And then finally, the paid on-call firefighters, they get paid per call, and so we have no current way other than changing our entire system and start calculating hours they're on fire calls. And imagine the house fire happens and starts. We may have some employees that, when the tones go off, can just say, well, I'm going to choose to take my paid time off at this point. So a lot of issues with public safety we have in mind on these. So by opting out, the City of O'Fallon will be able to ensure that fire response will be better staffed for operations and emergencies. We will be able to continue to allow our seasonal employees to be involved in their scheduling with using on-demand scheduling. And then again, I want to reiterate that no current employee or benefit eligible employee would lose any level of benefits or see any diminishment of that. So does anybody have any questions about this in particular? I do want to, I know we can't take a vote on it tonight, but I did mention that there is some lobbying going on to have other local or public agencies be opted out of this law. As a home rule community, we are able to opt ourselves out. That impacts us, but not any other public or private agencies in the City of O'Fallon.
Any questions for Grant from the committee? Council? Public? All right.
So this would be an ordinance, so it would require 2 readings starting next council meeting.
All right, we can't make a vote on that. Anything else you want to share on that? All right. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to 2.3, ordinance adopting the updated employee handbook.
Yeah, so this is an annual, or as much as we try to update the handbook, there is not many updates to share with you guys. Again, this is an ordinance, requires 2 readings, but the main ones are listed on here. So in our union negotiations this last year, as you guys know, each collective bargaining agreement includes Good Friday as a new holiday. So that'll be included for all employees that don't fall under the CBAs and instead fall under the handbooks. We did adjust our vacation leave to go to a weekly accrual. It makes it a lot cleaner on our end administratively, and in the event that the state doesn't, the law isn't changed for our paid time off, and we for some reason have to transition back to that paid time off we just spoke about, we would better be prepared to either retroactively or in the future calculate based on 40 hours worked. It doesn't change any accrual methods or anything other than making it weekly, which right now it's bi-weekly. So, and lastly, sick leave. For years, we have in our collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police that they are allowed to sell sick time at end of employment, and that amount is 1,040 hours. That is not what is offered to other employees in the handbook. It's a lesser amount, and so at the request of some of our police officers, we are including language in there that talks about the process when they get promoted from sergeant, which is a collective bargaining position, into lieutenant or higher. That is a handbook position that takes you out of the union. And so we wrote some language in there to kind of just clarify that process. And so what happens is when you get promoted from sergeant to lieutenant, you'll be offered to sell that time that's protected in the agreement at that period where you're transitioning out of the union. And then when you become a non-bargain employee, you enter the same tier as everybody else within our handbook. Those are the employee handbook updates for this year. We don't see, I mean, obviously, depending on how this Paid Time Off Act shakes out, I'm sure there'll be more changes. The one other thing that it's not a major point in the handbook, but I did want to clear up, the new FLSA requirements does require all employees now by the Department of Labor to track their hours. And so this will go for any employer. Exempt employees and non-exempt employees will have to calculate and record their hours for every hour worked. So there's no more of just employees putting 40 hours worked on timesheets. Or it's $400 per day, per employee, per instance, fines by the Department of Labor.
All right, any questions from the committee? Council? Public? Yep, come on up, Ron.
Ron Zelms, Ward 6. Are there any bargaining units in the city that have sick leave bank or not?
A sick leave bank?
Sick leave bank, where if someone has a catastrophic illness, you know, you buy into a sick leave bank and then they can
Sure.
use.
So it's not in any collective bargaining. We do have a critical illness policy in our handbook. Unfortunately, we've had to use it a few times. If an employee has a terminal injury or illness, it's more of a volunteer base. We put out a call. Employees can donate time. And how we do that is the first to come to offer is the first time used. That time does not stay in a bank. And in the unfortunate event that that employee does pass away, that time goes back to the employee who donated it if it was not used.
Any other questions? All right, if not, that gets through all the 2.0s and anything that had action. Then we can move on to other business for discussion. That would start with 3.1, discussion of the preliminary proposal for 2023 tax levy.
Yes, so this is the beginning of the tax levy. As you know, it's due the last Tuesday of December. So we're kind of doing a preliminary, because the numbers that we have are very preliminary. So I've been in touch with the county, and their first go-round, their estimate right now is about $840 million. Last year's ending tax levy, final rate setting was $838 million. So I know everything is not on there. I mean, we had more growth, more residential that should be added. You know, they did tell me their multiplier, so they're looking at O'Fallon to have a 1.086 multiplier, Caseyville a 1.0183. Because we have both townships, we just kind of average the two. And then, of course, we have our $2 million that I always put in because of board of review. And, you know, there may be more. You know, we don't really know, but that affects then, that reduces your EAV. They preliminarily have told us that disabled vet exemptions is $125 million. Last year, our ending was $96 million. So that's a huge jump. But I also know they go through them. So at one time we had $111 million out there, and it dropped to 96. So I don't foresee that $125 million staying. They do have a program that they use that they test and verify to make sure that everyone is eligible. So with that in mind, we can look at where we're going with it, and keep in mind, again, the tax levy is based on the dollar amount that we're requesting. It's not on the rate. We try to back into that rate, but it is based on the dollar amount. So the IMRF this year, in our budget, we really need about $728,000 to cover our IMRF expenses. However, I'm only requesting the city's requesting 500,000. Based on the audit, we do have a small reserve. So rather than just piling it up into IMRF, I'm reducing it to 500,000. Fire protection, we're increasing it 104,000. You know, they're gonna be needing more duty crew, extra expenses, so I did increase that. Fire pension, they are covered at about 200%. So I don't wanna not put anything into their pension because they'll eventually be needing it, so I did reduce that. Police pension is the same way. I increased it slightly. Social Security, kind of kept it where it was. We have a little bit of a balance, but with additional cost, I wanted to make sure we're covered. And then ambulance, so I did increase that almost 170,000. If you recall, several years ago, we really dropped it. And now we need to build that back up. So I'm putting in an additional 170,000. So that brings that to 5.6 million is what we're requesting compared to last year's 5.5. So it's about 131,000 difference. Now the library, the board is the one, they are the ones that tell the city how much we need to levy for the library. They've had preliminary talks, but they won't have a final answer until the November 14th, I believe. So when we meet in November, we'll have the request from the library. Roughly, they're looking at a 2 to 3%. So I went ahead and increased it. So these are not the final numbers, but I put it in so we'd have an idea. So additional 30,000 for the regular operating and Social Security IMRF remain the same. So that brings the total of what we're requesting to 6.9 million. It's about 160,000 more. But that rate, by backing into it, is 0.8188, and certified rate last year was 0.8142. So based on just experience of where we've been, we'll know more next month as they add more things to the roll. But again, it's based on dollar amount. The only difference, maybe we may tweak those numbers a little bit, but again, this is a preliminary. Now, they did pass that legislation about trying to make taxing bodies whole. And so we had a preliminary report that the county gave us, and it has to be filled out by the county, distributed to the Department of Revenue by December 31st. The county is still working on it. They gave it to a third party to do all the calculations for the taxing bodies. I did my own little, based on the calculations. So we're looking at approximately 290,000 for us and about 71,000 for the library for this fiscal year because there was a 50% cut. And then for FY25, based on that same calculation, we're looking at 685,000 and 159,000. So we don't know for sure if that's really what we're going to get until we actually see it. So we would hate to say, well, let's reduce anything by that amount because we don't know if it's going to be that. We would just recommend doing how we normally do it, and then let's give it a year or two to see where those numbers are. And what we could do is just roll it into, you know, a reserve, putting it somewhere on the Bill Fallon Trust, wherever you all decide to put it. But we don't recommend lowering those numbers yet until we actually see if this program is going to work. And keeping in mind, it is a 5-year pilot program, and there's a $15 million cap. So if all the taxing bodies, if it comes up to over 15 million, we may not even see some of this. So that's the preliminary. More numbers as I get them. So at a November meeting, we'll have what we'll probably need to vote on, because at the council meeting, we'll have 2 readings for December. So that's where we are.
All right, any questions from the committee on the tax levy? Council? Public? Ron?
Yeah, Ron Zelms, Ward 6 again. Sandy did, or maybe I shouldn't address you, but did the county indicate why the multiplier is going up so much? This year it was under 1, and now it's going to 1.08. Did they screw up last year? and had that multiplier too low, maybe?
I do have that into, because that comes from Jennifer, so she hasn't responded. But I am checking, so by next.
Yeah, that's a heck of an increase.
It is an increase, but I will find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other comment I have is really for the council. I think the act that is mentioned here, it's called, I did some research today, and I have a heck of a time finding it. Veterans Property Tax Relief Reimbursement Pilot Program. I think that's what it's referred to, based on the bill that was presented by the State Senator Willie Preston. It says, for purposes of the program, the department shall reimburse eligible funding taxing districts in an amount calculated under subsection C for revenue loss associated with providing homestead exemption to veterans with disabilities. The comment I would make, and I've made this before in emails, this city didn't lose any revenue because of this. You talk about how we're a home rule district. We're home rule, and we can levy, or you can levy, any amount you want. So if you levy $7 million this year, and your EAV is $800 million, you're gonna get $7 million. If you levy $7 million and your EAV is $900 million, you're gonna get $7 million. If this money truly comes back to the city, it's not city money. It's not money that the city lost. Where it came out of was all of our pockets in here who paid an increase in property tax in order to cover for the disabled veterans. And what I would hope is that the council would pass a resolution that says that any money that comes back because of this program is an abatement to the property tax. The county does this every year, where they over levy in December. And then what do they do in the spring? They go back in with an abatement because they've finally had a chance to look at their budget, and then they do an abatement. So if this money comes in, which right now is maybe $360,000 for this year, it should not go into reserves. I'm sorry. That is not money or revenue that the city lost. It came out of every other property owner's pocket. I hope we understand that, and I'm going to keep asking, and I'm going to keep pushing, but I don't see why we would call it a reimbursement to the city. You can't get reimbursed for something you didn't lose. Thanks.
Thanks, Ron. Anyone else have comments? All right. If not, moving on to 3.2, the Capital Improvement Plan, CIP presentation.
Thank you. So this is the start of the annual CIP presentation. As a reminder, this was attached in the board docs agenda, but just as for everybody that was not able to get on that, this is available at any time on our website. If you hover over departments, go to administration, and click on Capital Improvement Plan. The most recent one is right up top. I did check, you can just go on and Google or do a search for any O'Fallon, Illinois Capital Improvement Plan. It'll take you to the same spot. So this is easy to get to. The draft is published. It's for everybody to look at. Just as a reminder, and we talked about it briefly earlier, a capital item is something that has a depreciation. It is usually physical. It's construction over $50,000. If there is a large amount of engineering fees attached to that, Jeff does a great job on kind of putting that in a CIP. And then it's any item or inland marine equipment that is over $15,000. So this starts in July. Each department adds their own CIP. It's reviewed by staff twice. We have a large meeting with all supervisors that go through it. Everybody asks questions. And so now it's your guys' turn to look through it and ask questions, see where we go. This is a planning document, so nothing we have in here is budgeted for currently. As we move forward, you'll see this next fiscal year. Those are things that we lead as a budget team to try to get in the budget to present to you guys. And then going out to 5 years, for year 4 and 5, it gets a little bit more fuzzy on where funding and budgetary items come in. So walking through Easy CIP, which is our capital improvement plan. We have an introduction page. We have an Easy View, which is item specific. Every one of them has a description and amount. If they have funding sources, we try to put them in there, and then pictures also. We have many dashboards that talk about funding by department, what type of items, sources, by year. We even put them in by strategic plan item and category. And then we also have a project map, which shows you the approximate location of each item. There's an asterisk on here. Some of these don't specifically have locations if they're kind of enterprise or across the city, so typically these will just be located at City Hall. And then a new item to the CIP is we can start putting our archive plans on here, so if you want to go back and look at previous plans, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so tonight, we went over the dashboards. Big picture, 25 through 29 will be the next fiscal years for the CIP. Total amount of projects is $140 million. For this next fiscal year, it's 46 million, then 23, 14, 15, and 40. It's not that in 27 and 28 we only have half the projects. It's just some of them come in a little bit more clarity as they get a little bit longer in the project cycle. So before I jump into specific departments, does anybody have any questions about the CIP? Okay. So tonight I'm going to go through the administration, community development, and then Dan Gentry is here to cover IT. And then Jeff Taylor, I think that his whole committee is going to be just his CIP items. The new ones for this next fiscal year is just ongoing replacement of our camera systems, continue of our wayfinding parking signage program, city beautification, and then downtown streetscapes improvements. So this next fiscal year, and inside is we're looking on improving the downtown plaza, which is a corner of First Street and Lincoln in downtown. The columbarium has become, now that it's installed, we have a program, you'll see $25,000. Those typically are new columbariums being brought in, and then once we get enough, we will install the covering, which you see is the $60,000 amount. Lastly, in order to better apply for grants, we do include that bike trail along the CSX right-of-way, which is a linear bike trail going from the downtown area to the sports park. Any questions about administration projects? Okay. Justin asked if I'd cover community development, so he's got 2 cars in the next 5 years. He's available for questions. Okay. He's not a big one. Okay, moving on. I do want to reintroduce Dan Gentry, our IT manager. He is in the back. If anybody has specific questions about any of these items, he's more than welcome to answer them. You will see the one kind of thing that's new for this next year is IT repaving the front parking lot. For those who don't know, the IT building is on 2nd Street. See, I even forgot where it was at. Down by the Public Works compound. The years and years of dump trucks entering and exiting the compound have tore out the pavement leading to it. So this next year, along with the pavement management program, we'll be looking to kind of improve that parking lot area. I do want to note that our phone system replacement program is complete, mostly, other than just maintenance. And so that has dropped off from the CIP in comparison to last year. That's all I have for tonight.
For all of it? Okay. Any questions from the committee? Council? Public? All right.
Okay, so each department will go through theirs in their committee, and then we'll have a resolution on the city council adopting the CIP for this year.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, we'll move on to 3.3, treasurer's report. Anything, Sandy? No. Any questions from the committee? Council? Public? All right. Administration committee report, information only, anything?
Nope,
All right. Any
just good
questions?
reading.
Committee? Council? Public? All right, last but not least, 4.1, public comment. Any comments? Just ask that you come up to the mic if you have any. Any from the committee, council, public? All right, if not, ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, there is no motion. We're done.
We're done.
Thanks.
All right, we'll call the Public Works to order. Before we do a roll call, I'm going to read this thing that we're supposed to read, I guess. Thank you for being here tonight. This is a committee meeting. The purpose of these meetings is to hear information from staff, applicants, and citizens, and then make a recommendation to the City Council. For each agenda item, staff will first present the item, committee and elected officials will have a chance to ask questions, and then the public will have an opportunity to make a statement. Any action taken tonight in committee meetings will be advisory only and will appear as a recommendation at the City Council meeting, in which the entire City Council will have an opportunity to vote on the matter. We want to hear what everyone has to say, but we ask that all rules of procedure are followed. Anyone who wishes to speak, step up to the mic. You'll have up to 5 minutes to make your statement. Please direct your comments to the committee on the dais and not to individual members of the committee, staff, or anyone else in attendance. Public comments is an opportunity to hear from you. The intent is not a back and forth question and answer. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Rosenberg.
Present.
Mylert.
Here.
Roach. Carney.
Here.
Van Hook. Here. Hudson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Next item is the approval of the minutes. Draft minutes are attached. I'll take a motion to approve them.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes passed. Thank you. There are no items on the requiring action portion of the agenda, so we'll go straight to other business. Jeff, 3.1?
Yes, 3.1 is the Public Works Capital Improvement Plan. So within the board docs item, I provided a link that will take you to the CIP that shows specifically the Public Works projects. So if you didn't know how to do that, if you go to the introduction, down under Projects by Department Summary, you can click on Public Works, and that will just show all of those here. So what I wanted to do tonight is really just touch on the construction projects that we have planned for next fiscal year, and then in addition, really just talk about the 4 additional projects that we added to the CIP. So I'm going through these. Any questions come up on specific ones, feel free to stop me and ask them, and we'll kind of go from there. So starting at the top here, the Ogles Creek Trail is currently going to be budgeted for next fiscal year. So this is the shared use trail that runs from Milburn School Road to the entrance to the Reserve subdivision through the Ogles Creek Park area. Right now, we have $1 million budgeted. We are receiving $300,000 in a grant through MEPRD for that project. So it's on track for construction next year. Next construction item for next fiscal year is the pavement management program. This is our annual program where we do work on existing city streets throughout really the entire city. Right now, we budgeted $2 million for that work. So this is your typical, mill and overlay of asphalt streets, or like we did this past summer, the patching and asphalt overlaying of some concrete streets. So we use our pavement management plan that we worked with the consultant to determine which roadways need to be completed and when. I know they are out currently reevaluating all streets. So typically about every 3 years, they go out and walk every street in town and provide those numbers to us, and that's what we use as a guide for the next year. So I'm hoping to get those back here soon, and that'll help us build out our program for next summer. The North Cherry Street drainage is the next one that's identified for next year. This was been the CIP for a while. It's to alleviate flooding at 2 different low points on North Cherry Street where we've had flooding of homes that have occurred. That's mainly what it is. It's a low point in the road where you have driveways and garages that almost sit lower than the road in both these locations. So it's going to be a little more in the storm sewer, though. That area also needs some water line replacements, the mill and overlay of the roadway, so it's going to be kind of a more comprehensive plan than just drainage improvements. Next construction project will be our water main replacement program. We have identified an area out in Fairview Heights off of Union Hill Road in a subdivision where we currently are developing plans to replace the water lines in that location.
what will probably happen is the funds that were set aside this fiscal year and next will be combined to give us about a $1.5 million project to complete that all within the end of this fiscal year, beginning of next year. Let's see, keep going. Water tower maintenance is the next construction project identified for next fiscal year. We just had our inspections done a couple weeks ago, waiting for the results of those. Right now, just preliminary reports are showing that the two hydro pillars, which are the towers at Kyle and Posh, are probably going to need some sort of exterior work done on them. So once we get the inspection reports back, we'll be able to develop a set of plans and specifications to bid that work. Next two go together, the Longacre Drive and Ashland Avenue water main replacement. We currently are in design for replacement of the water line that runs all the way from Union Hill Road out to Ashland, out to Old Collinsville, along those two corridors. That is a 16-inch transmission main that is in need of replacement, so we're working towards developing plans to be able to bid that. Right now, combine the two, programmed at $2.2 million for that replacement. Next construction project is the East 4th Street rehabilitation. So this is really similar to what we've completed along the presidential streets over the last 5 years or so. This is set for East 4th Street from Lincoln to Hillgard. In addition, it will include portions of Apple and Park also. So you're looking at full reconstruction, curb and gutters, storm sewers, any old water mains, sewer lines that have to be replaced will be done at that same time. And timing's working out well because we'll be able to do it kind of in conjunction with a lot of the work that's going on at the community park and tie all that together and well. One thing in addition than what you typically see on these jobs, we are proposing to add in a shared use trail that runs from the community park up to the O'Fallon Station along Apple, so to get a nice good connection between those two facilities. Let's see, keep going. The State Street drainage study is identified in the program. We're looking to try to get to construction on that next year. Preliminary report on that is back. We've identified some property that needs to be acquired to really move forward with it. Still working through that, but the hope is to acquire that, finish developing the plans, and construct that next fiscal year. The Central Park Hartman intersection improvements, that's a $2.5 million project that is adding an additional southbound left turn lane from Hartman onto Central Park. Along with that, there's going to be some improvements down Central Park, replacing the culvert there that is under the roadway adjacent to the movie theater, and just some other, beautification type improvements also in that area. Let's see, keep going here. The sanitary sewer lining program, we're currently under contract with Visu Sewer to complete that project. Similar to the water main replacement, it'll probably be a combination of funds in this fiscal year and roll into the next one also. Next sewer project, Woodstream Bypass Project. This is to replace a portion of the south trunk line. We just wrapped up phase 1 of that. The plan is to start off where that ended. At a minimum, get it replaced under Quarry Road and then under the CSX railroad tracks. Right now, we have that programmed at $2 million for that replacement. Let's see, the other construction, we have our Public Works Operations building. But funds are currently budgeted this fiscal year to do architectural services for that building. Met with the architect just last week to start developing that scope and that proposal, so I hope to have that to present to the committee next month. But the funds to build it are projected out into next fiscal year. And then really, so that's all the main construction that's planned for next year. I just really want to talk about the 4 items that we have added to the plan this year. The ones I just mentioned were ones that were already on the plan. We've just kind of been moving around, setting them up, and being prepared to construct them.
The 4 that have been added this year, first one is the Deer Creek Stormwater Study. So recently, we've had a lot of discussions on stormwater, specifically the Deer Creek area right at Seven Hills Road. So identified funds within the CIP to perform a study for that. You know, the idea would be we'd utilize Prop S funds to do that. We could budget it for next fiscal year. Realistically, there's funds available now. If the council or committee really wanted to move forward with it sooner, we could get a proposal and get that going also. So I'll, you know, kind of leave that committee and council to decide, but for now it is identified in the CIP to be added. Another item, the Public Safety Building and History Museum Masonry Maintenance. So a couple things. We had a Public Safety Building here recently, a crack was observed within the masonry of the building on the south face. Had an architect go out and look at it, and think we're experiencing an issue with some expansion joints within the masonry. So trying to put together a proposal to bring in a mason to recut joints, add additional ones, repair any damage that's occurred. While we have a mason under contract to do that, the History Museum is in need of some work too. So whether that's just retuck pointing and whatnot, but we really need to evaluate that further to develop a full plan and scope to put out to bid. So that's been identified in the program. Another maintenance work on facilities, pump house and salt dome replacement. This is at the Public Works compound down here on 2nd Street. Anyone who drives down 3rd Street can see the salt dome. It's not in the greatest shape, the roof on that, and same with the pump house near the ground storage tank. So just a guess on that 100,000. I can't imagine it's too easy to re-roof a salt dome, so I can imagine we'll see some pretty good expense for that. And then the last item we're looking at adding is the Northern Dancer lift station replacement. So this is an existing lift station at the Stub Street of Northern Dancer, which is in the Cambridge Commons area. Of all our lift stations, it has one of the smallest wet wells, which is where the sewage really becomes stored and gets pumped out of. We're seeing upwards of almost 100 different pump starts a day in that, so it's just at capacity. We're needing to, one, get a larger wet well to serve it, and then there's also an opportunity for us to shorten the length of the force main for that, which would just mean less distance we have to pump the sewage, which is always a good thing too. So that's been identified for next fiscal year. So again, that's really everything that's been added, everything that's planned for construction next year. There's a whole lot of other items on there and other things too. If anyone has any questions on them, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions from the committee?
I have a question, Jeff.
Sure.
You were talking that 23-82, which is the 4th Street.
Yes.
Are you looking at the other numbered streets also as far as project-wise going through those?
Yes, so when you say numbered streets, so I know after 4th Street comes the South Cherry rehabilitation, so that includes the numbered streets on the west side of Lincoln. So that's pretty well South Cherry from 3rd to 50, but that would include 7th Street, 6th Street, 5th, 4th, off of Cherry. Now on the east side of Lincoln, 3rd Street's already curb and guttered, storm sewer. 5th Street running through the park is for the most part, all storm sewer with curb and gutter. We're going to be doing improvements on that as part of the community park project. Really, the only other one on the east side would probably be 2nd Street. At some point, we probably need to identify doing some more improvements on 2nd Street from, I guess, Vine all the way out to Smiley. That's yet to show up in the CIP. But, the other ones. 7th Street on the east side of Lincoln, that one's not identified currently either.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Jeff. Since it's been kind of thrown out on the table about the Deer Creek stormwater study, if the funds are there, I would entertain a discussion on that. So I don't know if we have to put that on the next agenda.
Well, so what I would do is really right now, it's just kind of like a nod, hey, we're interested in it. I'd need to go to a consultant, develop a proposal for them to do that study, and then I'd have to bring that back to the committee for formal approval of it, so.
I would
kinda
support
thought
doing
that's
that.
what the study was this next year's study was to do that. And I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I certainly would like to see it on an agenda once that study comes back, that we go forward with.
Okay.
Depending on what it says, obviously,
But do you need us to give you kind of the nod that we'd rather do it this fiscal year if you have the funds instead of next?
I mean, like any proposal we bring to you, typically there's a comment in there that it's as amended in the budget. So at any time, we can add in different stuff, as long as the funds are available, which within Prop S there is, so,
I'd say we do it
you
now.
know.
is it something that we can say now, we don't know what it's gonna.
Well, you
entail.
still would, you're just wanting permission now to go out and seek a contractor or somebody to come out and look at it? to do
Yeah,
the
we're
study?
gonna reach out to a consultant. We've had a consultant who's looked at this area in the past. I mean, we have a whole set of plans, to be honest, for a whole bridge there. And the question is that really the best course of action? Is that what needs to be done? It needs to be studied more and looked at, because last thing we wanna do is just go out there and slap a new bridge in, which may alleviate the flooding upstream, but may cause a whole lot of more issues downstream. So
And that's what
that's what this study would
it's
do.
already on there for.
Yeah.
But that's for next year, next fiscal year, in the capital
Correct.
improvement.
Yeah, we do not have funds budgeted currently for that study, but what I'm saying is I can get a proposal together.
I see what you're saying now. And I am
bring that
for
forward.
going ahead and moving that
Okay.
up.
All right, very good.
I see what you're saying
Yeah,
now, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay, will do.
Any other questions from the council? Public?
Dave Pfeiffer, 801 Deer Creek, and addressing the Deer Creek stormwater study. Unless we change the name of the creek, I think it's Engle Creek. So we probably ought to at least address the correct creek in the city and change it to the other study. And I know we don't have the whole scope of the project, but I certainly am in favor of moving that up. We've waited over 20 years to try to address this issue. There's really no need to wait. We've got the money. We've had a person flooded now for the 4th time. We're continuing to erode. The erosion is continuing. Eric down the street, he's put another, I think, on a quote, I think 5 truckloads of riprap in his backyard to help protect it that's coming in. The creek is exploding, and we're in a drought area, this year. We need to address this. As part of the scope of this, we need to address the entire Engle Creek watershed and look at everything upstream also, not just the bridge, but, why this thing happened. The subdivisions, were they adequately developed so that there was no increase in runoff? Were the detention basins put in properly? Again, the bridges, there's 2 of them that are oversized, larger upstream than the one downstream. Why aren't we moving along? And that was already on the budget once years ago to replace that bridge. And we need to address this now, and all this stuff needs to be included as the scope of this project. The channelization, it was channelized twice. We need to look and make sure that's addressed inside the study, and the effects of also the speed and the volume of the runoff that comes off of that because of the channelizations. The detention basins that are very, very inadequate and were just farm ponds that were placed that were on property prior, that were just say, hey, there's a farm pond, we're going to claim that as a detention basin for a watershed. All these things need to be addressed in this study, and I appreciate that we would go forward with it now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? All right, 3.2, the monthly report.
Yes, put together monthly report for Public Works. First one's just kind of construction update. The Westbrook drainage project's moving along. They're replacing storm sewer infrastructure on Juniper, just east of Osage currently. The pipe through the Hesse Park and through North Madison was already been completed. The other major project ongoing right now is the Simmons Bridge road replacement. You can see from the photo I have attached, it's nice and paved and striped. It's just missing the guardrails on the side. So heard today those are supposed to begin getting installed tomorrow. So if all things go well, it should be opening shortly. We'll put out a press release and a notice when that time does come, so. And then beyond that, it's just our monthly service request and work orders. That's mainly for requests that come in from citizens, and then the work that's done with the city maintenance personnel on staff.
Very good. Any comments or questions or anything else from the committee? Council? Any additional public comments? This is the public comments portion. You got something, Vern? Enlighten us.
Vermois, Ward 3. Just on this last paperwork you were saying about projects that people have turned in. I turned one in on the alley there on the 400 block of Adams, and I just was wondering what the status of that was.
I'd have to pull up our work order system and confirm it. We have hundreds of them that come in
Yeah.
on a week, and
You could call up and get a status update on it if you want. He doesn't have it handy.
No, it doesn't have it off the tip of the head, whatever. Okay. I was just wondering
By
what-
the
if it
look
was
of that
on-
list,
if it was
there's
on
a-
that list of ones that were turned in.
I
It
would
was
assume-
numbers.
yeah.
It was numbers, Vern. Vern, it was just numbers. X amount have been
Oh,
opened.
okay,
and
okay,
It
okay,
wasn't
okay.
the specific names or what the tickets were.
Cool. Okay.
So if you
Page-
want an update on
okay.
your specific one, call in tomorrow during the
Cool.
day.
Page 2.
Thank you, sir.
Well, now we're page 3, I guess.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the thought, now I'm speaking for the Historical Society, to render the problem we have with the leakage and the tuck pointing. So with everything you can do there, would be greatly appreciated. Okay? Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? Anything last call? How about a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? See you next week.